So firstly, I'm just going to introduce the speakers that we have today. Firstly, we have Saskia Bricmont. Saskia is an MEP from Belgium, from the Green Party and the European Free Alliance, and a member of the PEGA Committee on Surveillance and Spyware. We have Risto Uuk, Head of European Policy and Research at the Future of Life Institute. Next, we have Victor Negrescu, MEP from Romania and Vice President in the European Parliament, Socialists and Democrats group. We have Loránt Vincze, MEP from Romania, and thank you, on the Committee for Constitutional Affairs and President of the Federal Union of European Nationalities. Brando Benifei, MEP from Italy and member of the Socialists and Democrats and co-rapporteur of the EU AI Act. Stuart Russell, who we've already had introduced and had a fantastic keynote from. Rudi, MEP from Belgium, MEP on the Left Group and former trade unionist and former factory worker. And finally, we have André Rodrigues, MEP from Portugal, member of the Socialists and Democrats, and member of the Committee on Agriculture and Fisheries. So we're going to start off with our first discussion point will be on the effect of AI on workers' rights and employment. So I'd like to start off by asking Mr. Kennes to comment on whether we think that do workers have a right to employment when their job can be performed by AI? If AI allows capital owners to replace workforces with AI, how do we prevent extreme concentration of wealth? Would you like to open on that point?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think, of course, workers have the right on employment, even if their work could be replaced by AI. The point is not that we should be against progress or against these new technologies, but try to use them in the favor of society, in the favor of the workers and everybody's contributing. And of course, this is not always what's happening now. Two examples. I think all of you were at least one time frustrating talking to a chat box when you needed some customer assistance. And a second thing is, for example, translation. We in the European Parliament, we still have translators, and I think by AI you can make thousands or even billions of texts, so the AI can reproduce or translate. But I don't think they are able to really are suitable for a debate or for a speech or for translation. Yeah, mostly in a debate, because they cannot. I don't think. Well, I hope not. That they can actually kind of. It's not just a text. It has also to do with emotions and things like that. So what we saw the last decades, let's say the 70s, where I'm also a kind of a victim on, because I used to work for General Motors. General Motors closed my plant, although it didn't need to be. I think we can take the example of Audi, most performing factory in his group, and probably in Europe compared to standards. Didn't need to be, but we see that. For example, when we were young, we were taught you study, you get a degree, and so you find a job. Today we see the reverse. Because of AI, you see a lot of white-collar people. They have their degree, they don't find a job anymore, and instead, blue-collar people actually trained to work with with their hands and stuff like this, they are actually now, there's a shortage on the market. So I think overall speaking, I don't think we need less regulation, but we need more regulation. Talking about how do we control this and how do we redistribute wealth, if we see that most of these companies are all controlled by billionaires, I don't think that the original ways that we see today, or that we use to redistribute wealth, which is by tax, for example, that I think this is an area which will be lost in the future. We have to find other ways to redistribute this wealth. And I don't believe, we don't only see it in the AI, but also in the past in the industry, how it shifted. I don't believe by saying, oh, just give them the money, let them do their thing, and they will regulate themselves. I think if we see in the position that we are today in the industry, we cannot do this. And I think we need more regulation and at least more conditions before we let's say distribute taxpayers' money.
Thank you. Mr. Benifei, could I invite you to comment further on the point of the potential for AI to concentrate wealth in the hands of a very few number of people?
Yes, well, I think this is a crucial point because in the existing frameworks that we have decided also in this parliament, I think of the AI Act provisions on workers' rights or what we have with the Platform Work Directive are procedural rights that are linked to individuals and are reactive to issues like emotion inference systems and human oversight of high-risk hiring. I can give a lot of examples, but I don't want to use a lot of time. So we do have rules in place for AI and workplace already developed, at least in the European framework, with different degrees of depth. But this doesn't confront with the issue of the structural nature of the impact, which means the impact of on the number of jobs that are exposed to substitution. IMF estimates 60% of jobs in advanced economies. So without democratic governance of this transition, wealth concentration will increase even more than we already see today. So maybe on this specific topic of the wealth concentration, more antitrust legislation responses and consumer protection can build some response. But clearly we need also answers that deal with the transfer of the value that has been created through AI from that happens today from labor to capital, and the issue of the fiscal dimension that needs to be addressed by, at least in the European context, by the member states. And in fact, we are seeing, unfortunately, a retraction of cooperation on the fiscal cooperation at global level. Sorry. So I think that the big challenge I see is how we preserve a fiscal space, a capacity to act from the fiscal point of view in the context of the transformations that are happening, because obviously we can reshift some of the value by empowering trade unions to negotiate AI deployment strategies. We can require legally the employers to provide AI-related training with their own resources. But I think that without maintaining a fiscal capacity, we will not be able to actually act more decisively on the structural impact on wealth distribution.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor now for any of the panelists who'd like to build on what was just said. If anybody wants to volunteer. Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you. I think we are facing a global issue here. And the question posed as how we can prevent accumulation of wealth. Well, what we are talking about, if we can see what is the current accumulation of wealth with less than 1% of the richness of the planet is on the hands of a few people. So we have now inequality problem regarding the accumulation of wealth. And we have another issue regarding the risks of AI. That is the highly polarized political landscape that we are living now. I feel that with this very changed, polarized landscape that we are facing, even with the relationships between our former allies, we are now drifting in some kind of a risk of a perfect storm, because we are seeing the contrary of cooperation, and AI is a global risk as well as an opportunity. And therefore, we are now seeing the reason of rivalism, highly polarized political constraints. And in this context, in this political landscape, the more rich and more wealthy conglomerates are more free to do what they want. So we have to face new kind of fair taxation, and we must do more and do it a little bit quicker in order to control the risks of this highly polarized with the concentration of wealth. That said, we are facing real challenges today, and if we can see it as an opportunity as well, we should be also seeing the poor oversight, the lack of transparency, and all the issues that are regarding the AI and the concentration of wealth as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a lot to cover, so I'm going to move on to our next topic, which is the security threats from AI. So first of all, we want to consider the development recently of AI that has expert-level skills in discovering zero-day vulnerabilities in software. How do we ensure, given this context, that our cyber defense remains resilient? Can we adapt to this new situation? And are existing EU laws sufficient? Maybe I could start with Mr. Uuk.
First of all, thanks so much for having me. Thanks for organizing this very important conference. Maybe I'll just very quickly respond to also some of the topics previously. So we discussed whether workers have right to employment, and I just want to kind of emphasize how big of a deal the current situation is, and maybe when we talk about what impact AI could have on our children's and what kind of employment opportunities they might have, it's possible that we don't have to look so much into the future. Perhaps some of the changes, really, really big changes are happening right now in the next couple of years. So for example, I went to a workshop 2 weeks ago in London, and there were 2 expert thought leaders from one of the frontier AI companies that is building these very capable AI models. And they said that they are currently not hiring anybody below level 5, level 6, and they don't plan to ever hire anybody below that level ever again. And for those who might not know what this level means, in the US, tech companies use these different levels. And level 5, level 6 are basically 10 to 15-year experience of in software engineering or management, like very, very high-level people. Nobody below that level they will ever hire again. And this is not a view only among them. Many other companies make those kinds of points as well. So that's the first thing. Second thing, one of the thought leaders who was talking about employment issues, they said that by 2030, they don't expect them to have anything useful to offer to the labor market. So that's in 4 years roughly, and they were in a management position. So they thought that their skills and basically everybody else's skills would be automated in 4 years. So these kinds of timelines, and I'm not going to claim that they are correct. I'm not a super forecaster. They don't have a crystal ball. It's very unclear what the future will look like, but it could potentially be quite crazy what the next couple of years bring to us. And I think it's very important that we consider different scenarios very seriously. When it comes to the topic of cybersecurity, I'll point out an interesting irony recently where Anthropic released information publicly that their Claude model was used by state-sponsored actors to create automated cyber attacks. And it's to their credit that they highlighted this information publicly. They didn't have to. That's very useful. But they also said something interesting in their report, which was these models are, on the one hand, creating all the risk, and on the other hand, a solution to reducing those risks. And I find it ironic because in many ways, when we talked about Stuart, for example, talked about global red lines, perhaps we could go and find a better solution, which would be we don't create the risk in the first place. Perhaps that's a more effective prevention method. So I would also emphasize that part. And maybe I'll say a few things. Like, I know this conference is about beyond the EU AI Act, but I do want to highlight that the EU AI Act is a great opportunity as well, because cybersecurity is included in its scope. And I think what is very important is that we don't, we actually enforce the regulation. Right now, it's good on paper. There are many interesting cybersecurity-related proposals, including for general purpose AI model developers. And that's great, but do we actually enforce it? For right now, in August 2026, we have the opportunity to levy fines for companies that don't abide by these rules. We have to do that. We have to ensure that those rules are actually enforced, and it doesn't stay just on paper a good law.
Thank you. So I'd like to go to Mr. Negrescu now, and I'd like to specifically consider how war will change with autonomous weapons and AI. So we're starting to see that drones are becoming an extremely important part of warfare. And so I want to consider how will the rules of war change when potentially many direct kill decisions will be made by autonomous systems without human oversight. And perhaps you could comment on the point raised by Mr. Uuk just now. Maybe the best solution is to not develop these systems in the first place.
So first of all, allow me to thank you for the kind invitation. I think it's a timely discussion about how we are designing the impact that AI is going to have on our lives. Because of course, we have to design it. And we have to have a human approach when it comes to the implementation of these kind of technologies, whereas we refer to their implementation in our factories, or we refer to their implementation in war times. And it is also a fact that today these technologies exist and they are actually widely used. And of course, this raises a lot of questions and a lot of concerns, and you are right to raise all those issues. In the same time, we have to identify solutions on how to approach things, how to coordinate things, and also we have to understand the fact that we need, beyond Europe, a global approach when it comes to the use of AI. And in order to have this global approach, we need to define what our standards will be, but also in the same time, I think it's crucial to empower people. A few days ago, I was in a high school in Romania, and I asked students there whether they use AI tools. All of them are using these kind of tools today. I also asked them whether they had any class on the use of AI tools. None of them had any class on the use of AI tools. I did the same with their teachers. Only half are using the tools. And again, none of them are having any kind of trainings. So what is crucial, I think, in this discussion is also to reflect on how much we are allocating for this kind of AI training, and in the same time, how we also, and I have to say this, oblige the ones that are designing this kind of AI tools in order to make sure they introduce specific safeguards and making sure, of course, they also have a legal responsibility when it comes to the use of those kind of technologies. And this should happen, of course, in the normal environment, but also this is relevant for war times. And if we look at the war in Ukraine, today it's already 4 years since the start of the war, we see that in Ukraine, to come back to your question, they are already using AI. And to a certain extent, this has helped Ukraine defend itself. To a certain extent, this represents a big challenge for Ukraine to defend itself. So what is strange, and I also heard the previous intervention, is that AI is both a challenge but a solution in the same time. How to find the right balance, this is a complex exercise. What is clear here, and you probably know about the demands, for instance, of the Pentagon toward the AI companies developing these kind of technologies. We also probably heard about the UN also underlining the fact that this kind of weapons raise a lot of concern. But in the same time, we have to see what can be done, what will be our standards, and again, we have to make sure these are ensured at global level. So when it comes, for instance, on anti-personal mines, we have a global understanding these anti-personal mines should not be used. Unfortunately, they are still used, but there is a global agreement on that point as well. We have also a global agreement when it comes to the use of nuclear weapons. We also have a global agreement when it comes to the use of weapons that have a high impact and are harming people and, of course, hurting them and after that killing them because of the injuries that they generate. So why not have a similar understanding when it comes to the use of AI in war times? But this will not be easy because with these kind of solutions, you also have a lot of money involved, a lot of resources involved, a lot of interest involved. And in the same time, when people get scared, what they actually do is not to block these kind of technologies, is to use them even more. So what is crucial for us is, of course, the AI Act is a model, but we also need to speak about the ethical use of AI. I think ethics is crucial, and I think this is correlated also with what I said earlier, the need to invest in education and training. Here in the European Parliament, I'm calling for the allocation in the next multi-annual financial framework of 20% of the next MFF for education and training, involving the use of AI and robotics. Today, in the current MFF, we allocate 14% for education and training. I think we need to increase our investment. We need to do more on that. And in the same time, as it was mentioned earlier, and I will conclude on that, we also need to invest in cybersecurity. We were just confronted with a situation here in the European Parliament. We introduced AI here in the European Parliament, and a couple of days ago, we were informed that we are banning AI because it seemed that we discovered that we cannot control the data that is being given to those AI tools in this house. So it is indeed a rather complex situation, and of course there is no answer between yes or no. There is only the need to do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Russell.
Yeah, I just wanted to further some points about autonomous weapons. So autonomous weapons have been developed fairly slowly, and it's to us in the AI community, this was a bit of a puzzle because it's much easier to build an effective autonomous weapon than to build an effective self-driving car. And basically this has to do with the level of reliability. A self-driving car has to basically have about 8 nines of reliability. So 1 in 100 million chance of serious failure. A autonomous weapon can have less than 1 9, right? I had a debate with the chairman of BAE Systems, one of the very large weapons manufacturers, and he said, yeah, if it works 60% of the time, that's great, right? So not even 1 9. So I think the reason why progress has been slow is because on the self-driving car side, and I live in the Bay Area in California, where we are surrounded by self-driving taxis all the time. Waymo has hundreds and hundreds of self-driving cars, and sometimes you can be on a 3-lane road, completely surrounded by cars with no drivers. And it's a little unnerving, but they are very, very good. But it's cost more than $100 billion, maybe $200 billion to get to that point. And they had access to the most talented engineers and AI scientists to help them do it. Whereas the defense industry hasn't put that much money in and has almost no access to the leading talent, or has had almost no access. That's now changing, both the amounts of money going in and the talent. Because of the global situation, people are willing to work on it. So what's the problem with autonomous weapons? The UN discussions that you mentioned have focused largely on potential violations of international humanitarian law, that AI systems might accidentally kill a civilian, mistaking them for a combatant. To the AI community, that's just a challenge, right? I bet you we can do a better job than human soldiers at not killing civilians. And I think it's really a red herring. What the AI community has been concerned about, at least since 2015, when we got seriously involved in this, is that if you have fully autonomous weapons, that means that one person can push one button and launch 1 million weapons and kill 1 million people. So you have weapons of mass destruction that are extremely cheap, that can target particular ethnic groups, that are easily proliferated. They will be traded just as Kalashnikovs are traded on the open market. There are 100 million Kalashnikovs in private hands in the world. So essentially, we're creating a situation where weapons of mass destruction can be bought in any supermarket. Now, this is not an ethical issue. It's not a legal issue. It's what on earth are we thinking issue, right? How stupid could we be to create a world where anybody can buy and use weapons of mass destruction?
Thank you.
So this is, I think, really important. And I think the European countries, I have to say, have been party to endless delays happening in Geneva, where we're arguing about definitions and about, should we consider moral issues and this, that, and the other, while we are moving very fast now towards that world that we don't want to be in.
Thank you. I want to go to Ms. Bricmont. So we've heard from Stuart in his keynote about how potentially there's a risk that we're going to lose control of AI and that this is a extinction level threat. Now, of course, we also have another extinction level threat on the horizon, which is climate change. So how can we learn lessons from the efforts to combat climate change to address this problem, which is potentially, according to many experts, coming at a much shorter time frame of, threatening extinction in the next 5 or 10 years?
Thank you very much. You're doing the point that I wanted to make, because I entered politics thinking the next mass extinction would happen because of global warming, but Professor Russell extensively showed us it might even happen faster than we thought with the development of AI. But you're also bringing solutions, and I'm turning to what you shared with us, this call for global moratorium on the development of artificial super intelligence, not only intelligence, I note this, and what role can the EU play? And of course, the current political trend is not going in that direction. It's going in the regulation mode. You all know, because I think there's a lot of expertise in this room, that today we have the digital omnibus reopening existing legislation, including the AI Act. I find it horrific, horrible to think that this only in the world regulation around AI might be reopened and actually weakened, when, on the contrary, we need additional safeguards. Safeguards, this word has been said many times this morning, and it's also the story of my life here in this house for the 5 previous years, especially in law enforcement. artificial intelligence is rapidly growing for law enforcement. And this is also true in the mandate I negotiated for my group on the mandate of Europol, so the police cooperation agency. And I think we all agree that we are not, and you also say it in your call, we're not against artificial intelligence, but it's all about how to develop it hand in hand with the necessary safeguards. And as legislator, also EU legislator, we are always lagging behind. We're always too late. We're running after the developments and technological developments. And this is why those moments together are also important, to discuss it openly, because I think there's a huge lack of democratic debate around the evolution and rapidly growing use of artificial intelligence in all areas, as it is extensively shown this morning. And indeed, ironically, in law enforcement, tools are presented as bringing more security, when at the same time, we all know that it's also a threat for cybersecurity, but also, I want to insist on this, for individual freedoms and rights. I want to give some very concrete examples. For instance, the overcriminalization of certain communities and behavior that have already been shown, the chilling effects on people, the over-control of public space that is actively undermining individual freedoms and also strong risks for democracy and the rule of law. I think today, even if the EU has extensive legislation on data protection, on fundamental rights protection, on the AI Act, we still need more strict data protection and more fundamental rights safeguards before we develop and use further technologies like AI, also to avoid risks for individual communities. When it comes, I wanted to make also the link with the first topic, the workforce, employment, in the specific field of law enforcement. It's a choice. People, governments have to make a choice. Where do we spend the money in? In artificial intelligence tools or in resources, human resources, and agents on the ground? It's always a political and difficult choice that has to be made, but today our governments are more entitled to spend money on technologies instead of strengthening actually the justice. It goes hand in hand with law enforcement and agents on the ground. I don't have much time, I guess, looking at you. But I also wanted to make a quick link, because you said it. I used to coordinate for my Green Group the PEGA committee, inquiry committee on spyware. And this is a completely blurred area. There's no regulation on the use of spyware in the EU, nothing. We know those technologies are coming directly from Israel and from the US, NSO company and others that sell their spyware tools, very intrusive tools, to our governments without appropriate safeguards, without EU regulation. This is a loophole that we have to fill in. So far, the Commission is not willing to do it. So with your contribution, maybe we can also push further to have concrete regulation when it comes to spyware and such equivalent software. Final point, I think the political moment is, there is a political momentum for such a moratorium on the development of AI. It's not a ban, you said it. It's not opposing a development. It's putting the necessary framework around it in order to develop it as a tool at the service of human policies. And this is highly important today. And I think you must be ready to campaign. You must be ready to be active lobbyists, because the White House is the most active lobbyists supporting the big tech companies that want to push for their regulation in the EU. We want more regulation, we want more safeguards in place, and an active campaign by the civil society would usefully contribute to that. So thank you, and hopefully we can also convince this panel and our respective groups to convince the Commission to carry this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that our work is appreciated, and we'll keep doing it. So I want to go to Mr. Vincze. So we've heard about this loss of control risk, and that potentially this would require rapid regulation because this technology is changing very quickly, and it's going to potentially require global coordination. These are both two difficult things to do from a legislative point of view. How can the EU help this to happen quickly and at a global level?
Thank you very much for having me. Well, if we are looking from a general perspective, the AI, the big tech and data centers, all this digital ecosystem offer potential for human progress, yet we also see the risk that it poses to democracy, freedom and human dignity. We, as Christian Democrats, we say that technology must always serve the human person and the common good and not the other way around. Now, I think there are some statements that we can all agree on when we say that we are right to be cautious when we speak about the future of the AI. It is also true that we cannot stop the AI development. The AI poses immense threats to our European way of life, to our global way of life, and contains risks that we are not able to forecast today. It is true when we say, and all the colleagues said, that the EU tried and tries to regulate the AI industry, but it has little influence on development. While we are having this conference today, in many centers in the world, advancements are made in order to have even better AI models. We are not starting from zero. We already have the NIS2 directive, we have the Cyber Resilience Act, we have the AI Act, just that technology moves faster than our legislation. What matters now is implementation, coordination, and make sure that existing laws cover the AI-driven threats. Europe does not regulate faster than technology evolves, but it must be ready to act the moment the real risks appear. And of course, Europe on its own will not be able to regulate AI, as we will not be able to change the climate. In the European Union, we need to work with partners, but here our whole multilateral world is under threat. Diplomacy is not what it was a few years ago. What we used to have as transatlantic relationship is not the same as we had before. Now, Europe has few big tech companies, if any, so we can try to regulate something that does not exist on our territory. It is something that spreads globally, and it affects Europeans as well. So I think trying to ban, even here in the parliament, is a bit silly. I mean, we are not able to stop this technology revolution, and probably we should not. When we look from the human perspective, every step of industrial revolution eliminated workforce and created new jobs. In the 1900s, in the agricultural, people were working 7 days. Later, with the first step of steam machines and new factories, we had the 6 working days. Later, with the digitalization and automatization of factories, we have the 5 working days in the world. Maybe now the digital revolution of AI will bring in the 4 working days. How the wealth will be redistributed, how people who will lose their job because of AI will be able to live, and how the wealth will be redistributed. Probably this is one of the most important moral but also economic questions of our times.
Thank you. I know, Mr. Negrescu, you have to leave very shortly. I just wonder, just before you go, whether you could comment on this question of whether is this development inevitable, and is the pace inevitable, or to what extent can we sort of control this development, or are we kind of at the mercy of this American big tech companies?
I think the development of AI is inevitable. What can be avoided is just for some to make the decisions on this evolution of AI, and that we can indeed still influence the governance structures at global level, and we have to push for that. This will likely mean to involve also the private sector. This will likely mean to involve all stakeholders, but we need to define it. And we can simply look at data. I have some data here. So between 2013 and 2028, US private aid investment reached $109 billion. Europe has invested only $19 billion. When it comes to AI patents, Europe accounts only for 2.7%. When it comes to the use of AI, we see that the major companies are the ones using AI. SMEs, unfortunately, have difficulties. When it comes to the use of AI by people, we also see quite high inequalities between countries, between regions, and between the sectors. So indeed, I think it's, as I said at the beginning, a timely discussion, and we need to see what are the steps forward, how to approach this, but also we need to come up with concrete solutions. So I also want to emphasize what was said earlier, and I think it's important. Civil society does play a key role. You play a key role in raising those issues, in coming up with solutions, in pressuring politicians like ourselves, but also in trying to come up with examples, but also challenges that need to be defined. Sometimes they will require regulations, sometimes they will simply require political will, and of course, a clear approach when it comes to the governance system. So thank you again for having me here. And I think for everyone involved here in this panel, it's a great debate, and I'm certain we'll continue these discussions with you, of course, in the weeks to come, because things are moving rather fast when it comes to AI. So I cannot say in the years to come, it will be too slow in the weeks to come. Thank you.
Very true. Can we please have a round of applause for Mr. Negrescu? Thank you. And I think we have so much to cover that I feel like we should continue until the very end at 1 p.m. Because there's so many issues here. So, Mr. Benifei, did you want to build on what was said?
Yes, because you really stimulated me a lot, because we tried to do some of this with the AI Act, but I will be very brief. I just came back from the India Impact Summit, and it was clear there that you had all the big tech leaders, but you didn't have a very high level politically from the US and no China. I want to be very blunt, because otherwise we run around the things. There is the arms race rhetoric. This rhetoric I get all the time from the American friends is, in fact, a big stop to this idea of building global frameworks. To be honest, I tried discussing in some panels in India to bring together with others a different perspective, that the impact, the action is not against the idea of having higher level rules to stop the existential risks, to deal with autonomous weapons. There is a problem on that. The EU itself has a limit to regulation of military and national security issues at the EU level. So we have another complexity based on the structure of the EU. And when we look at these topics, the issue of the arms race rhetoric, I think, is creating a difficult setting to actually build on this. Because if there is an arms race ongoing, I listen to the various Amodei and Altman, etc. They say we want more rules, but we can't afford too much, because we are in a global competition, which on the political level becomes this arms race rhetoric. So you need to build a campaign on this, to build, we need to do it, to build awareness. And also, I think we should use the instruments we have. The AI Act provides a lot on this, as Mr. Uuk was saying, but also others. Because, for example, when we have a threshold on the flops to identify systemic risks in the AI Act with the GPAI code of practice, we could expand on that. And instead of having just disclosure requirements, we could discuss conditional restrictions on further development for certain levels of of development of the systems. And so I think we should use what we have, but also we need to confront the global debate, which means we need to engage with those actors that today are leading on a different direction, that is of no governance, because we are in a global arms race, and we should contrast that clearly, because this is the way to not have any form of global governance, but just a lot of UN debate. In fact, I was surprised that at the summit, Mr. Guterres didn't concentrate on the need to fight existential risk, but insisted on building a fund to give a basic infrastructure on AI to all the actors in the world. This is significant because the fact that he used the opening ceremony to concentrate on that instead of safety, I think tells you a lot.
Thank you. And very briefly, so I just follow up with Mr. Benifei. The EU AI Act is a product regulation of some sort, but potentially these AI risks could emerge during training inside of companies before these AIs are products. So do we need a new legislation to address AI, in itself rather than as a commercial product?
I think we need to expand on the code of practice and implement, because in fact we were criticized when we negotiated the part on the frontier development of AI with the code of practice on GPAI, that we were changing the way of regulating, that we stopped looking at the use cases and instead we looked at the technology. But sorry, in that case, when we look at the systemic risks, we needed to look into the technology before it becomes a product. And that was criticized at the time, but that's the only entry point to do what you have been just saying, that we look at the training, that we look at the origin of the model, not at the actual commercial application. So instead, we need to strengthen that part that we fought for, that was not in the original AI Act, that was the fruit of the negotiations, and we need to build on that, because that's the only part that actually deals with the systemic risks, with the issue of the risk of loss of control. And I think it's still today a global reference point, because unfortunately, as I was trying to say, I don't see much expansion on this, rather retraction that we should contrast.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Vincze and then to Mr. Uuk.
I think if we are to set priorities for the EU, definitely setting rules for AI in the warfare should be a top priority, because here we already have a strong foundation. The European policy is clear that technology development must remain human-centered, and we have the EU AI strategy, and we have the Council of Europe's Framework Convention on AI, human rights and democracy and the rule of law. And I think one of the main aims to fight for at international level for EU should be that humans must remain accountable for lethal decisions. It should limit on fully autonomous weapons without meaningful human control, and verifiable standards so that rules can actually be enforced. If this is something that the EU, with its long track record on human rights and rule of law, puts as a priority, I'm certain it can bring also some global leadership in it, because without this type of limitation, we are going to a stellar war. I don't know, something really bad can happen if these autonomous weapon systems are built without any limitation, without any rules, any governance on them.
Thank you. Mr. Uuk and then Ms. Bricmont.
I want to build upon a great point that Mr. Benifei here made regarding the code of practice. And I would slightly push back on the idea that the EU Act only covers products right before they come to the market or around that time. For example, in the code of practice, I have a specific measure in the safety and security framework in front of me, and there are other examples like this. For example, measure 4.2 is signatories shall proceed with development and deployment only when systemic risks are determined to be acceptable. So this is indeed an instrument, a practice that applies also to the development phase. Also, when you think about Article 55, which talks about different obligations for general purpose AI model providers with systemic risk, including assessment and mitigation of systemic risk, you cannot do those right before you enter the market. You have to do them a long time ago. And among the systemic risks, loss of control is one specified systemic risk, so they have to take this into account. I'll make a second quick point, which is, I feel like on this panel, at various points, we have sounded a little bit too much technological determinists, and I don't agree with that. So when I go to the US, to San Francisco Bay Area, everybody there is a technological determinist. Everybody says, oh, you cannot stop the development, it's going in different directions, you only kind of slightly can maneuver and improve it, and so on. I disagree with this, because what is this? Is this gravity? Is it like a physical law or something? No, like a few people are coming together. We talked about Demis Hassabis and Amodei, they're talking about pausing. If we agree to pause, let's pause. A couple other people come to join them. It's like you need 6, 8 people theoretically. Of course, it's more complicated than that, but it's not gravity. It's not some kind of physical law that we cannot stop. This is the economy. We can improve incentives. We can change things.
Thank you very much. We are pretty much at time, but Ms. Bricmont, would you briefly like to add on that?
Thank you. You actually made the point that I wanted to make as a concluding point, is that it's all a question of political will and where we want to bring our societies or we don't want to bring them. When I heard the professor earlier, I think the wake-up call is coming from the CEOs themselves. If they start saying, whoa, we need a framework, a global framework, and we are ready to go for it. But of course, we need a level playing field and everybody needs to enter in the same rules. This is obvious. So let's work with them hand in hand and bring this moratorium or global framework together. And of course, I would be willing, like you, that the EU plays a role in this, building on our legislation on the AI Act. And I think we have to push collectively in that direction because I think there's also a growing public awareness about the adverse impacts of AI. Not only in the work and the employment field where people fear for the jobs. And today we already know that the main losers will be the most vulnerable. The one occupying the lowest profile jobs. And so this is also social, not only societal, but social preoccupation that our governments should have. Last thing is that we have 2 challenges in one, is development of AI and how we can regulate it and put additional safeguards in place in order to have a proper development of AI. And at the other end, also a sovereignty issue for the EU, because we are highly depending on foreign technologies today, be it for AI, spyware technologies and others. It's also a question of what kind of future do we want for the EU without being always hand-bound with the US and other states. Thank you. I also have to run.
Right. Mr. Kens, would you like to very, very briefly wrap up?
Very, very short, and it actually the former speakers made it very easy because I totally agree with him. I want to come back a little bit to the real economy, so to speak, today. I think there is a lack of democratic control. I think trade unions need to be involved. They put their demands forward. I think also with the workforce, if AI comes in place, we see that only 50% of the people who actually worked within these jobs are actually trained by this. And my problem is a little bit today, the US, if I see that the Pentagon now is forcing AI companies to allow military use of all their AI systems for lawful purposes, they say, and if they don't, they will put penalties on them, then, well, I always thought, at least what they say themselves, is that there was a free enterprise in the US, which certainly seems not to be so. And the only security I want to talk about is the security of people. I mean, in Europe, we have these kind of disasters like flooding, wildfires, and so on and so forth. Let us please use there. AI is very, very useful, and not just going to war. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really fantastic. Can we please have a round of applause for everybody on the panel?